Manifestation.
Yeah. So
when you say manifestation, tell me.
It could take a long time to really assess whether what's happening is happening for real.
Take your time.
Yeah.
You saw a hand coming through.
Yeah.
So how are you going to be convinced it's God?
I may never be convinced because
Then what you're asking for is not convincing.
Yeah.
So that means your demand that you ask is not convincing to begin with.
Yeah.
Try again.
Yeah. What I'm
Shall we
saying,
go to number two?
Yeah.
No. Please,
Yeah.
please.
What I'm saying.
What was the name again?
Gio. Yeah.
Gio.
What I'm saying.
When you are asking,
don't take things as true from someone from the words of someone you've never met who died hundreds of
I am
years
giving
ago.
all that you want in terms of convincing you that there is a creator. So I want to hear from you, from your heart and your mind and your intellect and your scientific methodology or otherwise, right? God, that's God. When he came with the example of manifestation, you will never be convinced, according to what you've just said. So that means what you demand, if you have an hypothesis in science and says, look, you'll never be able to falsify it. That's a good hypothesis. You will reject that because it's not testable. It's not provable. So what you've asked for,
proving something
no, please.
Yeah.
What you're asking for is not that it's going to provide you evidence of certainty in your heart and your mind from your own example. So I have to cross this out. It is not what will convince you. Number two, able to talk directly. If you hear someone saying, I am God, we all hear it. You will be convinced?
Okay, well, let's talk then.
No. Would you be convinced? It's God.
Right, and I'd ask questions, and I wait for him to carry on.
And okay, you ask question,
So
he answers
he's given me a sentence. I'm waiting for paragraphs
No.
and probably a book.
No, he tells you everything that you want. He answers all of it. Answers everything.
Right.
Would you be convinced?
Well, that's purely hypothetical.
Your demand is hypothetical too, so it's not a problem.
No. We're in the world of fiction here. We can make up anything.
Options. We are in the world of how do we understand the Creator exists. So the Creator tells you and answers all your questions. You believe?
It's purely hypothetical.
No. You demand evidence to convince you without a question of doubt. If this happens, would you be convinced?
I'll ask for more and more and more and more until.
So at what point do you think you'll be convinced? You're not sure?
Yeah, because when you start...
Wait, slowly. Would you be sure?
No, listen. When you start an investigation,
Yeah.
you never know how far it's going to go and when it will finish and when you have all the elements. That's why, even in the court of law...
So you don't have to bend, you can see.
Yeah, even in the court of law, it's very difficult to prove that somebody is guilty or innocent.
But for you to be convinced
So,
without a shadow of doubt,
So,
at what point you will say, Khalas, now I'm convinced. Tell me, at what point? How many questions? Science, you have to put a number.
and it's not only me asking the questions, the whole world. So
I just told you, you're asking something which is not going to happen. Why? But God did not create you for the whole world to be forcibly believing in Him. So you're asking, saying, oh, God, can you show yourself? And you see that bottle in there with that jar, and you've got the lid behind you. Say, are you powerful enough to go into it? And you close it, you can't come out? You can't have that. So I'm saying, what you're demanding, ask yourself, it is unconvincing in the first place.
Right. And so
that demonstrates something about your own self. Perhaps you need to reflect more, have some self-introspection and saying, why am I being this hyper-skeptic about God? When I see the evidence, for example, have you ever felt, and you said, oh, God help me, ever in your life?
In the past, when I was a believer.
When you were a believer?
Yeah, when I was.
Okay, so what did make you disbelieve in Him? There must be some, either emotional attachments, something that happened to you emotionally, or purely intellectually and rationally, or a combination of both.
Because the whole story, I was brought up a Catholic.
Yeah.
Right? So the whole story from the Bible just didn't make any sense. It was not true to life. Okay.
Yeah. Like some examples.
The Virgin Mary, for instance. That's not true to life.
There are many species of the animals who gives birth to the same species from the same species. I'm sure you heard about this already.
Yeah.
So I don't see how.
Does it happen in humans?
No, it happens in nature. So you have already a precedent in nature, and then you can't say, oh, just because I haven't seen and witnessed in humans, it means it's not true and it's just a fable. It doesn't follow like that. This is really not very, being reasonable. If there was nothing of this sort that we have an example to compare with, that's something to say, look, this is like magic. Right. But what we have seen is how life can come to be, like with these examples.
I will be closer to being convinced by a phenomenon like that, rather than the ranting of somebody who lived 600 years ago or more, right?
No, when you say ranting, you see, look, the language you're using, it's something that's offending to you, perhaps.
Yes,
right. So, of course, very offensive word, but if we were talking about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I would like to know why this negative feelings.
Okay. Can we move on to the biography of the Prophet?
Yeah, we can. So, firstly, we need to just wrap up this argument, though.
Sure, yeah.
When you talked about the Quran and Islam is a product of a mentally ill person, and he has these ulterior motives to be famous, to be a king, to be a powerful authority. Now, the examples I have offered to you, demonstrates otherwise.
Okay.
And you said you're going to talk about this, but please do, so we can move. But at least we haven't found anything in his life which demonstrate that he was an imposter, a fake, a fraudster. Let's go back.
Have you read the Sahih al-Bukhari?
Many parts of it, yeah.
Have you read the part in book 7?
Oh, I don't know. Just tell me the reference and I can look into it.
Yeah. Narration of Aisha.
Okay.
The Prophet Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6. He consummated the marriage when she was 9. Aisha continued to live with the Prophet until he died 10 years later.
Sure.
Right. So.
Yeah, I'm aware of this hadith.
Yeah. Okay. So.
About marrying.
Yeah. You believe that's
young.
The words are true because it's
historically true.
Sahih means authentic.
No, you don't have to tell me. Historically, this is what is accurate for us.
This is what it says. This is what's written.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you have a friend who has had sex with a 9-year-old little girl?
So.
And secondly, do you have?
Let me write this down. Would I have?
Do you have any compassion with little Aisha, who had non-consensual sex with somebody in his 50s?
Sorry, I haven't finished my first question.
Yeah.
Would I have a friend, having non-consensual sex with a 9-year-old?
A 9-year-old little girl.
And the second question?
I think. Read it. What did you write?
Would I have a friend who wants to have sex with a 9-year-old?
9-year-old.
Would I be happy with that?
Yeah. A friend being in his 50s. Right?
Okay. Yeah. And this friend is in his 50s.
Right.
Okay.
So this is Prophet Muhammad. There are other passages in the Sahih al-Bukhari.
So you're thinking that this demonstrates God doesn't exist?
No. It demonstrates that the claimant doesn't have a moral compass.
Oh, moral compass.
Yeah.
We're talking about moral compass.
Yeah.
What is the moral compass based on? Can I first establish that and then we can talk about it? So he hasn't got. Prophet has no moral compass. Prophet has no moral compass. So let's establish.
Is it right or wrong?
Oh, right or wrong. You even talking about right or wrong?
Is it right or wrong to force a 9-year-old little girl to
force? Wow, look at this claim he's making.
A 9-year-old girl cannot decide if she wants consensual sex.
Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
So let's talk about holistically first. What is our moral compass based on? That we are judging something is immoral. Because your question is about immorality. This is an immoral behavior. So let's understand what is the yardstick that we're judging against.
In this country, it's the law of the land.
So if this country, yardstick, and you're going to stick to it, right?
Yeah.
Yardstick is the law of the land.
Yeah.
So if the law of the land says you can marry an 8-year-old and have sexual relationship, you'd have no problem with that.
Anything below the
Wait. So remember, the yardstick from your own definition, law of the land. So if we have now France from tomorrow saying people can marry at the age of 8 and have sexual relationships, and you are a French person and you live in France. You're a French national. According to the criteria, the yardstick of morality, the moral compass, you would have no problem with that, would you?
You're making a fallacious argument.
One second. Law of the land determines what is moral. That's what you said.
Yeah, but that's not.
One moment, please.
Yeah.
Let's go step by step. Are you saying the law of the land is what determines what is moral and what is immoral? Good.
In this country?
If England says it's okay to marry a 7-year-old and have intimate relationship, passes a law.
Yeah.
So according to you, it is moral.
No, it becomes just as bad. It becomes just as bad.
I mean, it's very difficult for me to continue this conversation if you backtrack. Excuse me, Jill. If you backtrack from the very argument you said, can I finish this point? You said the arbitration here is done by the law of the land. Whatever the law of the land decides is moral behavior. It's morally acceptable. If England decides marrying someone, or not even marrying, having sexual relationship with a 9-year-old is okay, according to the criteria that you set, it's morally acceptable. Are you now going to backtrack that?
What you're doing, this is what's known as a straw man.
I'm not doing straw manning it. I'm challenging your yardstick.
Straw man argument.
How is it straw man?
Yeah.
So how is it straw man?
You're portraying a situation that does not exist. There has never been laws enacted of that nature.
There has been. Don't you know English history?
In the UK, name
Henry VIII. He married someone very young. Like maybe wait.
21st century.
Oh, listen.
This is the 21st
So now here are the problems that I'm finding, Gio, speaking to you. With all due respect, please forgive me if you find them offensive. You said there is no historical precedent. And now, when we talk about history and precedents, you confine yourself, knowing that in history it exists, like Henry VIII, all the other English laws, even before, and now realizing that it goes against you, against your criteria of morality, acceptable behavior, you confine to, not in the 21st century, you will say, morality of today, Sunday, the 18th of July, 2021. And you keep on doing that, just like you will keep on doing when evidence after evidence will be provided, you will say, no, it's not convincing. So now, let me ask you once again for the final matter on this subject of morality, because I do not have even any reason to continue any further demonstrating from Sahih Bukhari how it's acceptable or not. By even discussing the moral arbitration, or the yardstick or the moral compass, is enough and sufficient to dismiss your argument at hand. Let me ask you again. If a country decides for itself, law of the land, having sexual relationship with a 9-year-old is morally acceptable, is this morally acceptable?
I would go against it.
Then it wasn't the law of the land then. Because the law of the land is, it's okay. So you have now, you know very well, if you understood logic, you've moved your goalpost. It's called moving the goalpost one by one. I apologize because your argument doesn't work, and you feel like, how am I going to counter this, counter that? Be sincere and ask yourself, actually, this man has some sense. It seems reasonable. If it was the law of the land, which says this, but I'm not accepting it, even though I put this forward. So it is not the law of the land which is the moral compass. Can you think of anything else? Just to broaden your perspectives, maybe something else is what you're after, which makes things moral.
The human rights.
What are the human rights?
Charter.
When you say human rights charter, who made them? Fallible human beings. And you saying they know everything, what is good for us and bad for us? Hitler knew what is good and bad for his people, didn't he?
So you're perfectly okay?
I'm not okay with Hitler.
No. So you're
neither am I okay with people saying these are the human rights.
You see, you're perfectly okay for somebody to have sex
No.
with You're not.
Listen.
You're not.
Don't take what I'm saying. I am saying I am not okay with your moral compass. That's what I'm discussing. I am not discussing Sahih Hadith in Bukhari about the marriage of Aisha radiallahu anha when she was 6 and so on. I'm not discussing that yet.
Yeah.
I am saying I don't even need to. I'm only discussing your presuppositions of moral compass. Let's talk about the moral compass. It wasn't the law of the land, because even if the law of the land said it's okay, you would not accept it. You will just reject it. meaning it was never for you the law of the land. Human rights. If some people say human rights is this and that, you know what? 100 years ago, same human beings were to hang some people here. Do you know why they used to hang?
Yeah.
Wait.
Tyburn, I know.
Tyburn.
Yeah, I know.
We on Speaker's Corner. We need to know the history. Why they used to hang them? What was the punishment of homosexuality in this country?
Probably death.
Death. The human beings decided death, which
Yeah.
was human right and which was human wrong. So you are going to tell me human beings in 21st century can decide what is right and what is wrong? I don't buy it. It's not convincing at all. I'm sorry.
So
It's not convincing to you either. Shouldn't be. Because you know by historical precedents, human beings were quite happy in offering their life to the Aztec gods of the Aztecs, saying these are virtuous things. That was a human right thing to do. But you know human rights and human wrongs can change and shift and reverse depending on time and space and culture and so on. So that cannot be an arbitrator, cannot be the yardstick. So you need to, my friend Jew, you need to start reflecting on what indeed is the yardstick, what indeed should be the moral compass. Something that, let me help you with some examples, maybe you can reflect on it. It needs to be objective. Law of the land is subjective. A land can decide one law, another law can decide another law, subjective. So first criteria of a moral compass needs to be objective. There will be nothing that you can bring from human experience of an objective moral compass unless it's from God. I can give you the argument of contingency and so on to demonstrate that to you. Morality can only be anchored in the one and only creator who is perfectly independent and absolute being. It cannot be based on a contingent being.
That's your belief system.
Not a belief system.
That's your belief
No, it's not my belief. It's my rational understanding, and I can go through the rational process to share with you how rationally these things are. So I don't need to just tell you I believe in X and Y and Z. So far, for the last 2 hours or more, I have not given my belief. I have given reasons for my belief. Reasons which are intellectual, rational, philosophical. They're grounded in solid foundation. If you disagree with them, that's up to you. I mean, no one can take this away from you. Even at the end of the day, you disagree. But all we can say is, my friend, you, please.
So you're perfectly
reflect.
You're perfectly okay for somebody to have sex with a 9-year-old girl.
When did I say that?
You definitely.
I have only questioned your basis of morality.
Yeah.
I have not defended or went against anything. I have not given my understanding of whether this is acceptable or not acceptable. Neither.
So you sit on the fence.
No, I don't sit on the fence.
Yes, you are.
No, I don't. Why are you imposing your words on mine? I am telling you that I have not given you any of them, whether it's this or that. Instead, what I have done to you is open up for you an avenue to reflect further, in which what is our morality based or anchored in, or should be anchored in. For example, you would be perfectly happy of man having sex with man, right?
I don't care.
It's not about care.
Yeah.
Would you say it's morally acceptable?
It's not doing me any harm.
I don't say about what's doing to you. Let me ask you again. Are you going to say it is morally acceptable for man to have sex with man?
I would say so. Yeah.
Right. So you see, even man having sex through the rectum of another man, that's what happens, right? Isn't it?
That's what.
Right. Hang on. Yeah. That's what happens. You're saying it is morally acceptable. May I ask you why?
Because it's happening between two consensual adult human beings.
Okay, got you there. Now we're going somewhere.
Right.
Sorry. Stop there.
Right.
Sorry. We're going somewhere, Joe?
No.
So it's about adults plus consents.
Yeah.
So morality is anchored in, independent of nation states, as long as two adults, they consent to their behavior, it's morally acceptable.
Yeah.
What's another thing?
Not harming anyone else.
And no harm.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Not harming anyone else.
Excellent. No harm.
Yeah.
So now let's test this. If your son wants to have, if your son who is, when is someone an adult? Let's define that first of all. 18?
Yeah.
18.
18.
Good.
Yeah.
Over 18.
Come of age, 18.
18.
Yeah.
If your 20-year-old son 20-year-old son wants to have sexual relationship with your wife, meaning his mother, consensually and using condoms. According to your logic, they're adults, tick a box. Consents, tick a box. No harm, tick a box.
Yeah.
It's okay, morally acceptable.
It will hurt me. I'll be hurt.
No.
Yeah.
So harm meaning what? So now you're going to redefine what is harm. So let's go back again then, because we haven't finished what we mean by harm.
Yeah.
So we have to come back to the example. When you say there's no harm, what do you mean by harm? When, for example, believing people see homosexual activity, it harms them emotionally, saying, how can they do this kind of acts? But because they're legally, wait 1 second, because if it's legally protected, otherwise you'll be a homophobic, they bite the bullet. That's what happens in a believing community. But it harms them emotionally, because they are concerned about how much harm their children will have by this kind of belief system and seeing these kind of things, right? To a believer, that's a pervert act, a sin in the sight of God. Sin. So they are really, really harmed. So according to harm criteria, this is morally unacceptable. Part of the criteria is harm. Believing people, theists, are harmed. This kind of acts. So you are saying, according to this criteria of harm, homosexuality is not morally acceptable.
It doesn't fall into the framework of the law.
Wait. Forget about law. We passed the law of the land. We already discarded the law of the land. It has nothing to do with it. So now we're talking about harm. So now if people are harmed, believing people who believe in God and consider this as a sin, look, we have nothing against homosexual people. They have inclinations. But what we are saying is God asks you to curb your inclinations and don't act it out. If you act it out, you're being sinful. In a law, a country in a law which has laws implemented, laws of God, they will be punished. But it's not on the people to take their own hands and punish these individuals. No. Right? God considers it a sin and there's a punishment for this sin. No right for people to be homophobic, right? Because people have many feelings. Some people want to have sex with their tree, whatever, right? But it doesn't mean that you have, the feeling that he's not a decent human being, not a human being. Still a human being, but they have these inclinations. Whatever reasons they have these inclinations. So according to harm principle, homosexuality is not moral because it's a harm. According to your definition, emotional harm.
No, I never said that.
So what do you mean by harm then? When your 20-year-old son and your wife wants to have sexual relationship within condoms, you're saying you'll be harmed. In what way you'll be harmed?
Yeah. I'll give you an example of harm, right? So in
this example, how will be harmed?
An example. If someone rapes you.
Stop. Sorry. Your son, 20 years old, wants to have sex with your wife, his mother.
Yeah. And they all
I apologize for this example, right? They're consenting and they're going to use contraception. You said you're going to be harmed. In what way are you going to be harmed? Let's draw this list of harms that you're going to be facing.
Because if I love my wife and someone in any of
they love each other as well. They love you.
No,
some people can't love multiple people.
We're talking about emotion because it's a natural emotion to be.
But they love each other too as well.
No.
So your wife loves you, and she sexually loves your son as well, and they love each other. So
then
you
I
might
have the choice if I want to stay with her or not.
No. When you say harm, what is the harm again? I need to know what the harm is about, so we can regulate and make certain understanding of this is what is harm, and then we'll use that principle to make things moral or immoral. That's what you're saying. Morality is anchored in to adults having consents and no harm. That's morally acceptable. So I give you an example, and we are only left with harm bit. You will be emotionally harmed because you feel some kind of betrayal, but she says, I love you still.
That is, I have the choice to let it go, and that's what I.
What's wrong with it? What's wrong with it?
Yeah.
What's wrong with it morally? What's morally wrong? They're consenting to adults.
Yeah.
So the wrong bit is harm bit. Is that what you're saying?
What?
There's something wrong is about harm. What makes it wrong is the harm that is causing you, isn't it? What makes it wrong?
Is it making it wrong?
So it's not wrong. Is it wrong? I'm asking you now. Is it wrong? Is it morally wrong?
we're talking about a hypothetical someone would do something. Yeah.
Real example, not hypothetical.
Yeah.
I am now reversing the table back to you for you to reflect on these, criteria that you set up for accepting morality and questioning prophethood of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah.
So we need to have a moral compass. So why is it wrong?
That he has sex with my wife.
Yeah, why is it wrong? What's wrong about it? Okay, we're going to finish this soon, inshallah.
Yeah. In fact, there is nothing wrong.
Okay, fine. So there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong. Let's leave it to that because we have to go. Now, may I continue this conversation later because we've been talking enough a long time.
Yeah.
But a few points that I would like you to engage further with you again, if we meet you, Joel, is on the character of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we touched upon the morality.
There's more.
Yeah, we will talk about
Yeah.
but not today because we have a long discussion and we want to make it short. So we're going to wrap this up by saying in the near future, we'll sit again, maybe here, and we talk about. So we will establish the moral anchorage, in fact, what the moral or morality is anchored upon, or the yardstick, the moral compass. Once we agree on this, then we're going to apply that moral standard and see whether, based on this, his actions were moral or not. Because unless you and I know what is moral or immoral, what is acceptable or not, it is wrong to judge someone. Do you not agree? It is wrong to say this is wrong when we don't even know what makes it right or what makes it wrong. Yeah? So let's leave it to that. I appreciate we had a long discussion and we had a very interesting discussion on various topics. So we hope that we meet again and we talk.
There's more.
That's what I'm saying. We talk again.
Yeah.
We talk again and we brush this, and then and come to a conclusion whether indeed Islam is true, indeed if God exists or not. Yeah.
And whether Islam is moral or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the perfect, the reason of discussion. So, thank you very much for having a discussion with me. And you take care and all the best. And if I have offended you in any way by using this example, then I apologize.
It takes a lot.
I apologize. Okay?
Yeah.
See you later.
And stay well clear of 9-year-old little girl.
You see, that's a very cheap shot because look, I wanted to end it in a nice way without being condescending and so on. Let's leave it to that. Until we meet again, take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mansur. All right.
Yeah.
You want to summarize?
It's okay. Okay. Oh, shall we just summarize? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yeah. So today I talked about on the ladder, continuing on the older traditions that we used to do. Speaking on the ladder and Speaker's Corner, we will maintain that inshallah. Talked about with the theme that we started from the last 2 weeks, establishing and reasoning with people why there is a creator has to be one, the irrationality of polytheism or tritheism and triunitheisim and so on. Today I touched upon the reason, I stated why Islam is the only acceptable way of life, religion and ideology from God for people to follow. And then I gave my reason for my statements of my belief, why Islam is true. And I gave 2 falsification tests from the Quran. And I gave you 2 examples of exploring one of the falsification tests. I talked about how the Quran says, if you want to disprove this book is not from God, just produce a chapter like unto it. For the last 1440 something years, people have failed to do so. You need to really now start thinking, why is it impossible to imitate? Number 2 argument I provided for the truthfulness of Islam is that Islam or the Quran is free from contradictions, inconsistencies and errors. 1400 years and more has passed, people have failed to find any. All of the thing they bring on the surface level is easily explainable. And that was what we've been doing for the last 20, 30, 40 years in Speaker's Corner. And I offered 2 examples to reflect on in terms of how the Quran provides information of the past, present, then, and in the future, demonstrating the knowledge it's coming from God. You cannot not only imitate it, you cannot even demonstrate that it is false scientifically, historically, and so on and so forth. I gave the examples of the bright piercing star with the hammering sound, a Tariq, which the knowledge of which we came to discover in our time today, in our lifetime. And I gave you the example of how there are darknesses of layers of darknesses in the oceans, and there's total darkness after these layers. And there are interoceanic waves where the Quran mentions, which you need to go up in space to verify and understand that. You can't just go with a diving kit and do that. 1400 years ago, there was no diving cylinders to go beyond certain meters to see this phenomenon. So I gave these two examples to reflect also how the Quran demonstrates to you that it is from God, and demonstrate to you that only one creator worthy of worship is none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is God alone worthy of worship. This is the only God that you have of this universe. There is no two gods or three gods. The one who is absolute, and there's one who is perfect. And that is what we mean by submitting and surrendering your will to this creator. That state of being is called Islam, and one who does that is a Muslim. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله ولكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.